Welcome to Grace Among Us, the podcast where we unearth the many faces and places of grace and share stories of the power of grace in our human lives. Our desire is that this will inspire you to see grace in your own life and share it with others.
Hello, hello. Welcome to Grace Among Us. My name is Carri Adcock. I'm a coach, and I help high achievers make space and enjoy the ride, make the impact that they desire to make, all with their life along the way. And we also have my dear friend, Ebony Gilbert.
Thank you, Carri Adcock. I am Ebony Gilbert, good friend of Carri, and I do a regular job during the day, and I do the fun stuff after hours like this, get to hang out with you guys. We have a special guest today, affectionately known as Betsy. And a few episodes back, I talked about the mountain experience where these people prayed for me and asked, what did I want to be prayed for and how could they bless me? Betsy was that special person I was referring to. She was one of those strangers who really embraced me and loved on me. And I'm so excited to have her here today, particularly for what we're going to talk about today. Betsy, feel free to introduce yourself a little bit further, give your real name, and we'll go from there.
Thanks, Ebony. Thanks, Carri. I'm excited to be here, a little nervous too. I am Betsy Shonka Owens, and for the last year, I have been working to love without fear, and that's the miracle that came for me on the mountain. So I am here, and I'm doing it.
Welcome, Betsy Shonka Owens. We had spoken to Betsy as she had heard some of these podcasts and had said, Carri, I want to hear about the miracles just like this, and gave a beautiful example of some of the miracles that grace brings. And so it was asked of her, hey, would you like to come on and talk about the miracles? And so, Betsy, thank you so much for showing up and being willing to talk about this topic. And so I am going to open it up to all of you to get us started on the miracles of grace.
The M word.
The big M.
So I want to start by saying miracles make me really uncomfortable. Like,
Me too.
The word, I'm like, oh, this is about to get creepy. And people are going to think I'm weird. So I'm so excited about talking about this. And thank you, Betsy, for bringing it to our attention and making it a little less weird. I'm assuming you have a comfort level with the word miracle. Talk to us about it.
I don't know if it's a comfort level. It's just as certain events have unfolded in my life, it's been undeniable, and just impossible circumstances remediated without any effort whatsoever on my part. So it could only be explained by something much larger than myself orchestrating it. And so I think that the thing that came to mind, the greatest example I had is 12 years ago, my husband died, and it was a tragic situation in that there was a death, but it was also an extremely complicated situation in that we were separated at the time of his death. And there was a lot of very difficult and complicated things going on in and around that separation. And then all of a sudden he's gone, and this woman who has been totally removed from his life is making the plans, the final arrangements for him. And there was no money. It was very complicated. And on the morning of the funeral, I was $400 short to pay the people who were preparing the meal that everybody was going to receive at the church after the service was over. and I had no room on a credit card. I had everything was tied up in this legal situation that happens when people die. And my sister went to the closet and she pulled out a bag for me to put my tissues and whatever in. And she opened the purse and there were 4 $100 bills in the purse. And I don't ever remember putting that money in that purse. And you can go back and you can look for all of the explanations. Maybe during the separation, I was stashing money for, emergency purposes or whatever. But I had no idea it was there until my sister handed me this purse that she randomly pulled from the closet as I'm getting dressed to go to a funeral where I happen to be $400 short of a bill that I have to pay at the end of the service. And there it was. And for me, that was just like, it was so undeniably, I am here. I've got you. You're taken care of. Don't sweat this. I have you. And for me, that was a miracle.
Wow. Just wow.
Yeah.
I pulled up the definition of miracle. There's two that I really like. Can I read them? Because it
Yeah.
resonates with what you just said, Betsy. The first one is a highly improbable or extraordinary event, development, or accomplishment that brings very welcome consequences. The second one, which is my favorite, a surprising and welcome event that is not explicable by natural or scientific laws and is therefore considered to be the work of a divine agency. Isn't that beautiful?
Yeah. Yeah.
So there's so much in what you just said. Because when I think of miracles, I think that you got to have this total trust. And you were worried in that moment. It wasn't like you were just convinced it was going to be okay.
No.
So there was no disqualification of the miracle because you had doubts and you were worried. You weren't disqualified from grace.
That's right.
Second thing that stuck with me, because I grew up around a lot of elders who had a prayer closet, literally a closet. And your sister goes into the closet, the real closet, the proverbial closet, and comes back with the bag. And, also in my upbringing, the bag represents so much. So you go in the closet, you get the bag, and what you need is in the bag. Man, that's so good. I want to do a whole skit. So good. So good. I'm going to be quiet because I'm excited.
More to come. I'm interested in the skit, Ebony.
Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah. Okay. Betsy, I love just like what Ebony just talked about in the definition is it was what you said. It was just inexplicable. Like a miracle is just inexplicable. And to your point, Ebony, you don't have to be like, none of us have to be anything to receive a miracle. Like, I couldn't receive a miracle right now. Like, we get to receive them as is. Miracles are not discriminatory. And I love to remember that because I'll be absolutely honest. Sometimes I love the M word, and it also makes me very uncomfortable. And part of the reason that it makes me uncomfortable is sometimes I see miracles in other people's lives. And to be perfectly honest, I'm not in a great place in my life. And sometimes I want to be so happy for them. And I also feel ashamed that I'm not happy for them in that minute. And it's just a reminder that when I see a miracle, even if I'm not in the greatest place to be 1,000% excited, I'm going to remember this, and I'm going to remember, wait a second, I'm all ready for one too. I don't have to do anything except
And I
believe.
think,
Yeah, go
I'm
ahead.
sorry. I think that's why there's witnesses, because you guys, I didn't remember the purse story. Like I was in grief. I was in shutdown. I was in absolute survival mode. right? And it is my sister as the witness to my miracle, right? I mean, it wasn't her miracle. She didn't need the money. I did, right? And it is her being present to it and then being the reminder that would come forward to me months later. And when I was in like a really negative place, forgetting that I had ever gotten a miracle and was basically like having a total self-pity party for myself. Like, and God doesn't ever do anything for me. She's like, what about the $400 of the purse the morning of the funeral? If that's not a miracle, I don't know what it is. Right. And so then all of that memory coming back to me and that knowing I was taken care of in that moment, the relief, the wow, like, but my life, I skipped right over that little miracle when it happened. And then life got lifey beyond that, and it was like, what miracle? Right. I mean, so it's very interesting how I get these witnesses to my miracles, or I get to witness somebody else's miracle. And even if I don't know why I'm the witness or why I'm having the reaction that I'm having, like I'm called to witness it for some reason. And it's going to come up later. It's going to be relevant later, even if it's not to me in that red hot second, I think.
That's awesome. That's so awesome. So when you remember it, when it comes to mind, even if it's through a witness, your sister or someone reminding you, how does that change your mood? What does that do for your vision in that moment?
When she brought that to me, and I had so conveniently compartmentalized it, right? When she brought that to me, I remember where I was standing, what I was looking at, right? I remember exactly where I was, even though in my own, in my own memory, I wasn't going to allow myself to go there, right? And it's this instantaneous recognition of even when I didn't, that was a dark day. It was one of the darkest days of my existence, right? And there was that moment of absolute clarity that I was being taken care of. So I haven't had, I need some wood to knock on or something. I haven't had a day at that level of dark since that, right? And yet my head, my humanness tells me all the time that things are even worse than that.
Hmm.
Right. And so I have that memory to be like, wait a second, I'm not where I was that day. So why am I doubting the way all of these pretty good things are? Yeah, it shifts everything, that recognition, that knowledge that I was given that blessing, that miracle, that grace for a reason. And I get a choice about whether or not I live into it and remember that it's there for the taking all the time, or I can compartmentalize it, put it away, and pretend like it's for everybody else, but it's not for me.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's so good. There's a song, there's lots of songs. There's a song that I really like, Gyra. And all of the lyrics are outstanding. But there's one particular line that really, really, really speaks to me. And it's not even, if you read the lyrics, it's not even listed. It's one of those kind of, ad lib things they add on. And it says, I don't want to forget how I feel right now. You're nodding. And it's toward the end of the song. I don't want to forget how I feel right now. And to me, that's in that moment when you have that miracle, when you have that revelation, that transformation that happens within your spirit. And without a shadow of a doubt, this was nobody but God. Because there ain't no other way this could have worked. There's no other way. There's no logical, illogical, or other explanation, because you search for them. If you're anything like me, you look for the other explanations. It doesn't exist. This had to be God. And that moment when you're so full and you're so grateful, and it was nothing but the grace of God, and you had your Lazarus miracle, even though this is thousands of years later. And then a few days later, you forget. And you go back to another dark place. It's not even as dark as the last dark place, but it feels heavy and it feels dark. Like you're talking about, Betsy. I don't want to forget how I feel right now. I don't want to forget that we're having this podcast and we're excited. And no matter what happened before this time today, and no matter what's going to happen after this time today, we can remember this moment, that miracle. And I don't want to forget the excitement and the peace and the grace that shows up just from remembering it.
I had this powerful experience in I don't want to forget how I feel right now and carrying that forward. I was listening to a talk one time, and they were talking about how the hard work actually begins after you get the miracle.
Mm.
Like you get the miracle, and then it's like, all right, now there's work to be done. It's not like the miracle just comes and then there's nothing to do, right? And so they use the example of the man whose sight is restored, right? And like nobody goes back and, talks about what his life looked like 6 months after he could see. Like all we talk about is this moment where his sight is restored, and it's like, wow. And everything that he knew, he had no skill, he had no ability to earn money. He begged in the street. He said, hey, have pity on me. I'm blind. I can't support my family without your contributions. And then he wasn't blind anymore, so nobody felt the need to give him anything. He had to figure it all out. Like he had to really start over, because now he's miraculous and he's got this whole new platform to work with, and he has no idea what to do with it, right? Just like there I was with these kids and a single parent in a way that like really single parent, not like every other weekend and Wednesday nights, like like this is it, it's you, kid, go. And I had no idea. I had no idea how to operate from that platform. That wasn't what I signed up for.
I love that point. I love that point, Betsy, of like what happens after the miracle. Like, I don't know that I've ever thought of it that way.
Mm-hmm.
And as you're saying it, like my head wants to bob off because I'm like, oh yeah, yeah, yeah. Because and what comes is it's almost like, let me give you this gift to carry you through what I'm growing you in to be. Like, you have something new coming, honey, and let me start you out on a good foot. And that point of being able to access, like, as you're speaking about the closet and the bag and the $400 and not even like you not being touched by it in that moment, it just but being touched later. And even as you speak it, like I get goosebumps, and it's like I know that feeling of just being like when you're floating in the water, it's like you're just being carried, and that like you are loved, and like you're in the right place, even if the place looks a little chaotic at the moment. Like that strength that comes from that, like you're giving me this new insight that that's something to carry. Like it doesn't run out of steam and it's not attached to some specific time. Like, and just because it can do that for people, even when you share it with somebody else, it can't be worldly. Like, it's gotta be coming from God. So, I just wanna really thank you for it's just a whole different perspective, and I so appreciate it. And there's a little part of me that's like, "Well, you better think of a miracle, you better think of one and share it." And, in this moment, I'm just appreciating what's here and being honest. So, thank you.
It- That's so good. That we have a choice. We can attach ourselves to the trauma of the incident and recall that and recount that over and over again, or we can attach ourselves to the grace and the miracle that got us through it, and we can tell that story. And this reminds me to tell the grace story, because it's so tempting to tell the other story.
Well, I think that, the morbid curiosity of people is to always look at the tragedy, right? I mean, it's to look at the tragedy, and there's not any tragedy that I know of that aren't coexisting miracles happening in and around it. I mean, it doesn't change the fact that very tragic things happen and bad things happen. It doesn't negate that at all. However, there is, the equal and opposite reaction, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the good is there too. Um, and sometimes it takes the witnesses to remind me of that. I mean, since I was reminded, I've never forgotten.
Mm.
But, in that foggy space, I mean, there was a lot of distorted perception, a lot of intense feelings, a lot of humanness in that experience. So I needed other people who had more clarity, who were more clear, to remind me, because it felt big enough that it was, all consuming. So it was really good to be reminded that, I'm taken care of. I don't have to look very far for it. It just doesn't always look the way I think it's going to.
And you weren't looking for it. It came and found
Oh,
you.
oh, absolutely. I mean, I was putting my borrowed dress on. Somebody told me, don't ever wear your own dress to a funeral, because every time you go to your closet, you're going to look at that dress and be like, that's the dress I wore to the funeral. So borrow the dress for the funeral. So I borrowed a dress for the funeral. So I was putting my borrowed dress on. I wasn't thinking about the money.
That's beautiful. That goodness and mercy and grace will follow you. It'll hunt you down.
Mm-hmm.
If it has your name on it, it has your name on it. It'll come get you.
Mm-hmm.
That
And
comforts me.
yeah, and it's specifically for, I mean, there is no other person on the planet that was intended for in that moment other than me, the child of God that I am, that I am created to be, with my exact experience that I was having in that moment. That miracle would not have translated for anybody else. It would have been lucky. It would have been like, woohoo. It would have never been it wouldn't have been linked the same way without all of the other specifics.
Oh, the synonyms for miracles. Carrie, what do you got? You got some synonyms. What do you call them?
Oh, like luck, or is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, the pseudo synonyms.
The
Luck,
pseudo, yes, yeah. Luck, coincidence. Um, yeah, I can't.
random.
Yeah, random, out of nowhere. I love to use
Mm-hmm.
that one. Wow,
Mm-hmm.
this just came out of nowhere. I get a lot of out of nowheres. This whole journey right here is out of nowhere. Really,
Right. Right.
really. Yeah, yeah. Any other ones, Ebony? Pseudo synonyms?
Pseudo synonyms. The same ones you just listed. Um, Somehow it worked out. It just showed up. It landed on my plate,
Yeah. I don't know how
showed up
that
at my
happened.
door. And what if we started calling it what it is?
Mhm. That's a really good question. So, when we began this, Ebony, you said it, uh, I think you used the word discomfort or uncomfortable about
Mm-hmm.
the the word miracle.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I want to inspire or encourage anybody listening to this to be bold and call it what it is. If you see something that you may have defined prior as, coincidence, and you now see it as a miracle, speak it. And the question, I didn't get to the question. So the question, Ebony, is tell me about the discomfort.
I hate to admit this, but I will. There's a part of me that wants to be mainstream. And in today's world, that means saying things that I just don't feel really go over as cool, Like, it's so much, even the definition, it said, considered to be the work of a divine agency. I would never say that, but that's far more acceptable than saying the Lord. Um, the Lord showed up and did this. It's if I'm in a setting and it's easier for people to hear to your higher power, maybe you should ask for something different. Um, Perhaps you should expect something unexpected and maybe it will show up, as opposed to pray for a miracle and ask that God grace you with something that you don't deserve and that he just does on his, it that sounds so bold that in my mind, it can be offensive. Now, having said that, I have never said any of that stuff before and got an offensive reaction or some negative reaction. God protects me in that space every single time. But I have to get past the noise, get past the voices in my head that say you're going to offend people. They're going to think you're a holy roly person, and you're going to take away your relatability, and you're going to lose cool points. And at no point is that more important than my kingdom kid status. But in the moment, I wrestle with it just a little bit. Just a little bit, because I'm sure, Carrie, you can recount some miracles that have happened. Betsy, I'm sure you have more than that one. I have several where I know without a shadow of a doubt, God showed up and did some amazing things that nobody else could do. And it was right at the right time. But for some reason, my answer goes to, it just happened at the right time. What is it? It's a pronoun. So if I replace the it with what it really is, I get all squeamish. And I'm worried about the reactions in the room, and I'm worried about what you're going to think. And then you're going to ask me to explain it, and there's no explaining miracles. And I get all weird about it, even though I know in my mind and in my heart, that's exactly what it is. So my answer, Carrie, I don't want to offend. And when I get into that space of wanting to please people and make everybody feel comfortable, I'm getting further away from giving God the glory for what he did. And I don't want to do that either. So I have to just, buckle up and do what I got to do and say what I got to say. Call a miracle. But it doesn't always feel good. It doesn't always feel natural sometimes. Sometimes it's uncomfortable for me. Am I talking Greek here? Y'all are looking at me like, oh boy.
Oh no. I'm in
No.
total agreement with you. And what was going to come out of my mouth is, well, I hear that discomfort and I can relate to all of it. It's like, what are they going to think? And can I say that here? And to your point, every time I've done it anyway, like I have no bad stories to tell. I have nobody even rolled their eyes or gave me. And what I wanted to say is, well, Ebony, since you were so widely honest here about the whole thing, you may feel different next time the M word comes up, because it's all out here. So, yeah. It's interesting. I went through some stuff. I was in and out of court for years, in custody and things like this, right? And it was very, very uncomfortable. And there were some very hurtful things that were happening during that time. And, I have a very sweet family who was extremely supportive of me. And part of how they were supportive in the beginning was to bash the other person, thinking that was, hey, we're on your side and how can they? And I can't believe, and blah, blah, blah. And I remember one time, because I was learning, I said, can you just pray for him, to my mom? And she looked at me like I was a crazy person. And I said, you know what? Just pray for him. Like, I don't know what's going on, whatever, right? So she said she would. I have no idea if she did. Actually, I probably have an idea based on the rest of what I'm going to say. So uh, it was a couple months later, we had this big court event happening, and it went sideways. It was all of the outcomes were not as expected. It was like something it it felt like I was in a movie that I was not casted for. It was very interesting. So after got home and the rest of my family lives all over, and I said to my mom, I cannot call them. Like, I can't do it right now." And she said, "I'll call them." So she was in the other room, and I heard her on the phone call her sister, and I could hear the volume coming back from her sister through the phone, and my mom said, "You know what? You just need to pray for him." And it was like and that's what it reverberated through my family, and that's what they started to do, and that is a miracle. So they're contagious too. I they just I mean, there is no way that I could have used any words to convince my family any different. Like, I could not have done that. And my mom really couldn't have done it either. It shifted. Never again did I hear a conversation from my family bashing this person. And the miracle is that, they nobody was creating any more stuff than was already there. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
Do you think your mom would have said that had you not said it to her?
No, absolutely not.
You threw the rock in the pond and it just
Mhm.
rippled out.
Over time. Yeah. Yeah,
So much power in our words.
absolutely. In what we do speak and what we don't speak.
Mm-hmm. All right, so we got to start using the M word.
Yes, ma'am.
Yay.
Oh,
Eb
that's so good.
Ebony, how about you? Do you have um, a miracle you'd like to share?
Listen, I'm a walking, talking miracle. You know what I mean? I eh, so many, and I could hone in on the big one that I'm alive because I've had a cancer, big cancer that didn't look good more than once. I could hone in on that one, but I think I want to focus in on the little ones, on the days when all hell is breaking loose. People are resigning on my job. I'm in a hiring freeze. I can't hire nobody. The work is 3 times bigger than it is. And in that moment, ask the Lord, in that moment, pray. Just take a 30-second, 1-minute prayer. And I ain't got to use a lot of words. He already knows. God, I need a miracle for my mind so that when I log off of this computer, I don't go become self destructive and lose it and go to the dark place. And I say it and I go to my next meeting. And then before I know it, I've got my music on, I'm cooking a meal, I'm in such a better place that I could not have gotten myself by myself. You know what I mean? I didn't have to do calisthenics. I didn't have to go run around the block and get my adrenaline pumping. I didn't have to do anything. That quickly, God graced me with something that protected my thoughts and my mind. Those are the miracles that happen on a regular basis. And I'm so grateful for those. And they seem small, but to me, they feel huge because oftentimes I feel like my mental health is on the line. Nothing's going right. I can't see the grace. I can't hear the grace. I'm looking at my phone thinking, is this thing broke? Because nobody's called in hours. No one's sending me encouraging text messages. I cannot figure out how to make this good. And I say that prayer, or I take that minute to breathe. And I realize that The miracle is I can take a breath in and spit it back out, and the lungs keep working. The miracle is that I can get up and continue to live a functional life, and it's all right. So it's the little miracles that I'm getting excited. You probably can tell. It's not the, oh, he saved my life and he did this and he protected me from the car accident. It's that stuff too. But it's the daily miracle of showing up to a podcast after a long day and a sleepless night, and he still uses me to say something. That's a miracle. That's a miracle. So that's what comes to mind. That's what fills me up. That's what gives me the gumption to keep going.
That's beautiful, Ebony. I love that. I have now put that in my pocket. Lord, I need a miracle for my mind. And
For my mind.
yes, and I love what you said, that like there's like everything's chaotic, right? And there's no logical solution. And the miracle is that the ease comes even in the midst.
It doesn't mean the situation got fixed.
No.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean tomorrow morning's gonna look different. It means he kept me.
Yeah.
And to Betsy's earlier point, I'm protected and I'm covered and he's carrying me. And to your point, Carrie, I'm floating now in a rip current.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't make sense.
It doesn't. And as you float, what kind of rock are you dropping in the pond and rippling out in the chaos?
Because somebody's going to ask you, why are you so happy?
Yeah.
Somebody asked me that yesterday, 8 o'clock meeting in the morning. And they're like, why are you so chipper? I'm like, we don't have enough time for me to tell you.
Just cause.
Why I'm so happy. Because I don't even know the answer. Or yes, I do. Yes, I do. Yeah, I do. It's a miracle. It's God's grace in action,
My big smile is like, oh, is Ebony going to say that at work?
Pray for me.
Okay, I did. I just did. I will again.
That's so good. That's so good. Betsy, thank you so much.
Yeah,
Well, thanks for
Betsy.
providing the place where we can talk about it and not feel weird about it. So perhaps that just gives me the courage to say it more freely outside of a space where I know it'll be well received.
Thank you for bringing the topic, Betsy, and bringing yourself, all of you. It is, truth be told, I've known Betsy for quite some time. And as Ebony said, she is a walking miracle. Well, Mrs. Betsy Shonka Owens is also a walking miracle. So this has been so much fun.
I'm so glad I came, even though I was really scared. Love without fear.
There you go. There you go. Ebony, last words, final for this time.
Look for the miracles. They're there. They're there. And ask for them. Be bold. Be bold and ask for them. And then thank God for them. And then bear witness. Not just to your own, but to others, because somebody needs to be reminded. And don't forget how you feel right now. You know what I mean? Remind yourself, bring it to your mind when you need that reminder. And we'd love to hear from our friends, our online community. What miracles have you experienced, and what did you do with it after you got it? What was the work afterwards? That's all I got, Karen. What else you got? You got anything else?
Ebony, you're so good at that. I think you said it all. I'm gonna let it rest with that. And yeah, and this time I'm gonna say thank you to everybody who's listening. Please tune in again, and grace out.
Thank you so much for joining us. If you enjoyed this episode, please let us know. We love to hear from you, and share it with a friend. Also, please be sure to subscribe so you're notified when a new episode is posted. We hope you're leaving with another pointer to grace, a new perspective that will light it up in your own life. Until next time, be well, be bold, be kind to yourself, and be on the lookout.